Hi BookTube, how's this for a change of scenery? I'm sitting on the floor in front of my third bookshelf that you never get the chance to see because it's on the opposite side of the room. But I was just sitting down here naturally because I had opened my sparkling wine here. And I don't know, I just felt like it. But what I wanted to do here as I was sitting on the floor thinking about beginning to read for the evening was give you a little update on my reading of Proust's Within a Budding Grove. I filmed an update video 5 or 6 days ago, read a bunch on Monday, and then did not read anything at all until Friday over my lunch hour. But on Monday, I came to a wonderful point in the novel and to a wonderful realization of what Proust was trying to do. So in my previous video I had talked about our young protagonist's disappointments relating to going to the theater to see this famous actress that he was obsessed with and heard great things about. And disappointments that I was afraid he was going to have in love, and he did indeed have that disappointment in love. But at a certain point, Proust literally brings all these things together to make a very poetic point, so to speak. So I was reading through that. Oh, I've got my French notes in here from the online course module I was doing, Sounds of French and English. But let's see if I can find that spot in here. God knows I've got enough notes that should point the way. Another funny scene here as I was reading, and our protagonist goes to this fancy dinner table for the first time. Madame Swann invites him over because he's been spending a lot of time with her daughter, and both of the Swanns, this young lady's parents, have taken kind of a shine to him, and they think he's a good influence. But he goes to this party and sees this much revered author across the table, and he's understandably nervous, but he's not too familiar with some of the intricacies of eating in, quote, polite society. So when he comes in, he is handed a card at one of these parties, and he doesn't immediately look at it, stuffs it in his pocket because he doesn't want to look stupid, has no idea what it is. Later on, he opens it up at home and realizes that it contains the name of the woman that he was supposed to walk in to dinner with, indicating that he left this woman to walk into dinner alone, which would have been noticed by his hostess and probably by, a number of the guests. But there's another scene with, I believe it's an olive or a little cherry tomato or something, but he is trying to figure out how he should go about eating these. At home he'd probably just pop them into his mouth, but he notices this very dainty lady, cutting it in half with a fork and knife, and so he follows by example. Following a dainty lady probably wasn't the best decision, but he goes to cut this olive or whatever in half, and of course it goes shooting across the room into someone's face or lap or something, which is quite embarrassing for him, but I found quite funny. So I'm having trouble finding that spot that I was looking for. Oh, but here's something lovely. He makes this conclusion, Proust does, about all the fictitious versions of people and places and experiences that we create in our heads. And once again, that theme of disappointment and disenchantment comes up when, of course, he realizes that things are not as he imagined them to be, or even perceived them to be, because he was, dreaming of what he wanted far too much, or what he supposed there should be. He's making this this kind of conclusion that Gilberte, the daughter of the Swans, who he was, madly in love with, we get the sense that he's more in love with her image and idea of her than who she actually is. He may not actually know who she is at all. She is quite fed up with him because I think he's a little bit too straight-laced for her. And maybe she's realized that he doesn't really know who she is either. But he comes to the conclusion that there is going to be this idea, this fictitious Gilberte, in his mind. He says, "Not merely then I thought about her, but then I made her think about me when I was closeted alone with my fictitious Gilberte, wondering what really were her feelings towards me and imagining her thus, her attention as constantly directed towards myself." So he's acknowledging that this image he has of her isn't real. This fictitious version of her that is always thinking about him isn't really out there. The real Gilberte is, out there going about her life and probably not giving him much of a thought at all. And it ties back for Proust to his earlier discussions of, writing and of going to the theater. And the protagonist is coming to his conclusions about these things. So I'm really enjoying Within a Budding Grove as I move on. So I'm currently on page 355, and the last thing I underlined is kind of mid-page. "Alas, for my peace of mind, I had none of the detachments that all these people showed. To many of them I gave constant thought." And so he is getting older. He's about 13, I believe, here. Maybe 14. And he is, obsessed with looking at and wondering about other people. He's not able to go about his life because he's constantly concerned about, who are they, where do they come from, and what do they think about me. I've gotten to the point where he is separated from his mother, who he has quite an attachment to, and is on vacation with his aunt. And he's still, he's an ill young child. He's been ill as a young child and is still ill, in his teenage years. And perhaps because of that illness, he clings to the women in his life quite a lot. There's one scene where he smothers his aunt's face in kisses. That is quite a display of affection, and his aunt seems, very worried about him, and you have to wonder, is it just his health, or is it the fact that he is, behaving as you would expect maybe a 5 or 6 year old child to behave in terms of his affection towards her. So I'm still immensely enjoying it. I plan to read a bit of it tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to be reading tonight because the point here of opening up this sparkling wine was to settle down with Netflix for the new season of Queer Eye.